The wax drops. A Spartan officer presses a stylus into the tablet, and your name cools under his hand like metal left in dawn wind. He does not look at you. He points, middle line, wives. Mantinea has fallen. Smoke hangs in the alleys like old breath. Men are chained to the left, elders counted to the right. You stand in the narrow column between, where futures are measured the way grain is weighed, quickly, without speaking. Iron touches iron on his belt. Keys click like teeth. A runner whispers into his ear. The officer nods, scratches another mark, then tips the tablet so the light takes your name and flattens it. Distribution, he says. The word is gentle. The meaning isn't. They move you through a street that pretends to be quiet. A ribbon of silk from a looted chest is caught on a nail and flutters like a trapped bird. You think of your house, the hearth, the bowl with a chip on its lip. You think of nothing. Thinking is a door and doors close. Sparta is tidy about victory. Our city is ended not by the last sword, but by the next morning. Assign widows to citizens who need heirs. Fold old names into new ledgers. Erase grief with ink. It is policy, and policy does not blink. There is a rumor, a wedding at night. No witnesses. 2 doors. 1 for entering. 1 for leaving your former life behind. You count the locks you pass. 1, 2, 3. You count the breaths you are allowed. You press your palms together to keep them from shaking. The officer taps the tablet once as if to wake it. He tells you to walk. Tonight. You will know why. Mantinea does not vanish in a roar. It vanishes in lists. The Peloponnesian War has many famous days, but yours is not on a monument. 418 BC will be carved for generals and treaties. Your line will live on an officer's tablet, a notch cooler than the wax around it. Sparta calls this order. You feel it as a narrowing hallway. They fear numbers more than spears. The helots outnumber Spartan citizens many to 1, and that imbalance beats like a second heart under every decree. Boys are taken at 7 into the agoge. Men learn to eat pain and speak like stone. Women learn to manage estates while husbands sleep in the barracks. Nothing in this design is accidental. Even grief is rationed. You are marched past the ephor's portico and the barracks where shields hang like moons. The city looks poor on purpose. No walls by law because the walls are the men. They look at you only when they must. The runner returns with orders. Your group shifts like a flock. A scribe asks your age and how many births. He does not ask the names of the dead. Names are the first thing policy removes. Fact is a blade with 2 edges. Fact. After Mantinea, captives were sorted. Citizens ransomed or killed. Rival elites buried or bought. Women of childbearing age assessed, then placed. The word shivers. You feel it along your arm where the officer's finger pointed. Middle line. Wives. Rumor fills what fact refuses. They say there is a program for widows. Quiet assignments to older citizens who have not produced heirs. They say the match is made by the state, not the heart. And this binding is performed after dark to keep the city from seeing how victories are kept. They say a door is locked from the outside. They say another door is locked from the inside. Which door matters depends on who is speaking. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You do not know those historians. You know the smell of iron and sweat. You know the silk ribbon still caught on that nail, flicking in the breeze like a small, stubborn life. You know the way the scribe's stylus paused before your name, a tiny mercy that felt worse than speed. Across the square, an old man carries a jar of oil that does not slosh. He has had practice. A girl wipes a bench that does not need wiping. Everyone is careful because carefulness is how the city breathes. The officer beside you checks his keys again. They touch each other softly, teeth, counting. They tell you the policy ends revolt for a century, not a season. They tell you your children will be safer for it. They tell you what must be told so the seal can fall without sound. Behind those words, the city's second heart goes on beating. Fear measured and fed. You watch the red mark dry beside your name. The wax cools, the ink cools. Your hands do not. Your wound is simple to name. A husband who did not come back from the wall, a house with its breath knocked out, 3 bowls, 1 chip, a ribbon of silk torn. But Sparta's wound is older. It was cut before you were born, and it never closed. Long before Mantinea, an earthquake broke Laconia. 464 BC, houses fell, the helots rose. Every Spartan story since carries that aftershock in its bones. They learned that a city can be drowned from within while the river outside looks calm, so they built a life that never sleeps. Boys are taken at 7. The agoge sands the edges from speech. Men live in barracks, eat in messes, wake at the sound of iron against iron. Love is permitted, but never allowed to rule. Grief is permitted, but never allowed to gather. Your husband once said, "Sparta does not waste words, because words can turn into crowds." You laughed when he said it. You do not laugh now. The runner moves your line past a courtyard, where shields lean in pairs. On one, a small dent like a knuckle. You stare until the officer touches your sleeve. Keep moving. Your sandals scrape brass dust from the stones. Somewhere a brazier burns resin. The air tastes like incense and old bread. Ordinary, almost. The cruelty is how ordinary it is. They call this program a kindness. Older citizens without heirs receive widows who have proved they can endure. Children will be born from order, not desire. The city will never have to fear the names of its enemies returning on tiny tongues. It is a clean arithmetic. It is the kind of arithmetic a frightened power loves. There is another wound under yours, humiliation that does not show on skin, being counted like grain, being placed like furniture. The scribe asked how many births, not how many nights you stayed awake, teaching a child the difference between thunder and siege. The mark beside your name did not even look angry. It looked bored. Fact. After Mantinea, alliances bent like reeds. Argos recalculated. Tegea watched. Sparta tightened. The Ephors approved measures no poet sings about, because poetry makes holes in walls. Ledgers do not. Rumor is steadier than law, because law changes with the men who speak it, and rumor changes with the women who remember. They say captured brides are shaved, dressed in plain cloth, left in a dark room. They say the man assigned comes in silence, because the city prefers victories that do not need witnesses. They say he leaves before dawn, because the city prefers fathers who belong to the barracks, not to lullabies. They say a key turns twice, once to open, once to teach you what is closed. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You do not have those letters. You have a wrist still warm where the officer's finger pressed the middle line. Wives. You have a tongue that must learn new answers to old questions. You have a body the city has classified as useful. Sparta's old wound throbs beneath the cedar smoke. Every policy here is a bandage that tightens instead of loosening. You try to picture your husband's shield hung above a doorway that is no longer yours. You try not to picture the room they will tell you is a room for sleep. Keys tap. Ink dries. Silk sticks to your palm. You lift your chin. The officer says your new house has olives and shade at noon. He does not say the door, he does not have to. The city's wound will say it for him. They call it placement. You hear another word, binding, not to love, but to policy. The household that receives you sits at the edge of the city where olives comb the light. The man is older. A scar at his jaw. A neat porch. A water jar that has not cracked through 2 summers. He greets you with a nod that could be pity, could be inventory. Fact. Spartan citizens ate in common messes and slept in barracks until 30. Even married men returned to their units at night. Private homes were second homes. Marriage was a civic task, not a theatre for tenderness. If a man had not produced heirs, the city noticed. If a widow had proved endurance, the city noticed that too. Notice becomes order. Order becomes you. Inside, the room is brushed clean, as if dust is a kind of disobedience. A loom hums without a weaver. A bronze cup waits on its side, catching a slice of afternoon. On the lintel, a strip of wool. White, not ceremonial. Just practical cloth to quiet the bite of the door against wood. Practicality is how Sparta worships. Your host, husband by decree, sets down an iron keyring. The keys chime, a small sound. It fills the house like a bell. He shows you where the oil is stored, where the grain is counted, Where the cistern is safer than it looks. He says little, you say less. The city prefers silence to start things, as if speech were a fire one should bank carefully. Rumor to strengthen bodies, Spartan women cut hair short, wrestled, ran. Rumor. On certain nights, brides were dressed in men's cloaks, left in a dim room, told to wait for feet that arrived like orders. Rumor. If a man could not come, a younger man came for him because the city loved results more than faces. Rumor is a braid. It holds what the law leaves loose. He asks your age. He asks how many births. He does not ask what your husband laughed like when the barley rose straight. You answer with numbers, because numbers are the safest language in this city. When you finish, he nods once, like a scribe who has copied to the last line. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You feel those letters without touching them. The way a room can hold a temperature after the fire dies, the way incense clings to hair, the way silk remembers a crease long after hands have smoothed it. At dusk, he takes up the keyring again. The sound is softer now. He says you will manage this house. Olive's linen accounts he will return to the mess at night. If there are children, the city will be pleased. A kindness, he calls it. The word feels like leather pulled tight across a wound. Fact. The state could allow a man to loan his wife for strong offspring. The state could allow an heir to be named beyond blood. If the city desired a continuity it could trust. In Sparta, blood and ledger spoke to each other, loudly. You understand the conversation without hearing it. You sit where the loom waits and thread your breath through the empty warp. The cup on its side catches the last light. It looks like a small moon fallen on its face. You pick it up, you set it right. You try the word home in your mouth, it does not fit. Not yet. Outside, boys run with spears they cannot lift. They laugh like water-skipping stones. Somewhere the barracks shout rises and falls, iron against iron. In the doorway, a strand of wool strokes the wood when the breeze moves. The key ring rests on the table. It could be a crown for a city of locks. Forbidden bond, that is what the rumor calls it. Not yours and his, yours and the state. A binding that pretends to be gentle so it can hold harder. You breathe, silk at your wrist, iron in the air, incense in the memory. You count the doors again without meaning to. One for entering, one for leaving your former life behind. You have chosen neither. The city has chosen both. Control arrives as fabric, not chains. A bundle of linen, 2 wool wraps, a clean chiton, garments issued like orders. You unfold them and smell sun and soap, not ceremony. The city hides power in neat folds. Silk is rare here, but even plain cloth can be a rule if the rule says wear it. Fact, Spartan law prized austerity. No gold on doors, no purple unless for sacred rites, no long dining in private when the mess calls. Weddings were not feasts but functions. Lycurgus, they say, taught them to make life narrower so it would not split under weight. A narrow life is easy to steer. At the threshold a woman from a neighboring house appears, the way warnings appear, quietly. She sets down oil and barley, eyes on the ground. She tells you which drawers stick, which jars weep in rain, which words to use with the steward who pretends not to listen. She never touches your hand. Touch would make the room warmer than the law prefers. The older man, your household, keeps to his pattern. Dawn, mess, midday, accounts. Dusk, keys on the table. He does not threaten. He does not need to. The threat is the script. If a household breaks its line, the city notices. If a woman refuses the loom, neighbors notice. Notice is Sparta's first punishment. Rumor moves where notice cannot. Rumor says some brides were shaved so no hair would invite vanity, dressed in a coarse mantle, and left in a dim corner so the body would feel like a corridor, not a stage. Rumor says a cup of watered wine was set within reach, not for celebration but for stillness. Rumor says the door closed softly because loudness would make the policy sound like what it is. He speaks of olives and frost dates. You answer about roof pitch and the way smoke wants to live under beams. He shows you the ledger for the grove. Trees numbered, yields marked, debts crossed with a single red stroke. That stroke looks like the one you saw beside your name. Ink is tidy. It makes something disappear without raising its voice. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You can hear those letters in the house at night when everything is quiet and the keys on the table are not. A tiny metal murmur every time the breeze shifts, teeth counting. In that sound lies the city's bedtime story. Obedience sleeping, heirs waking, fear kept fed at a measured rate. Fact, even love here learned to make appointments. A citizen might visit his wife by stealth, cross a yard under moonlight like a boy, leave before dawn to keep the mess bell his only master. The law preferred children to come from bodies that belonged elsewhere at night. It kept loyalties braided to the barracks, not the bed. Silk against skin was permitted so long as iron stayed at the center. A quiet threat is more efficient than a loud one. Loudness raises witnesses. Quiet slides a habit onto your shoulders and teaches you where to stand. You learn the weight of the key ring by ear. You learn which hinge size. You learn when to set the cup upright so it will not roll and wake the house. Outside, the boys practice running in silence. Inside, the ledger rests like a sleeping animal. Somewhere beyond the porch, an owl takes a mouse without a sound. You fold the garments back into their bundle. The folds hold. The night will too. The night does not arrive like a storm. It arrives like a clock, on time, with a small lamp. The house still smells of olives and wool. Across the lane, a dog yawns without warning. The keys lie on the table, arranged the way he arranges them every dusk, largest to smallest, as if size were a law. He says he will return from the mess after moonrise. You nod. The door closes with that careful Spartan softness, threat measured into etiquette. The lamp gutters, steadies. You listen for the barracks chorus and hear it, iron counting iron. The room has the feeling of a page before ink. Fact, in Sparta, married men returned to their barracks. Visits were brief, sometimes secret. The city favored offspring and discipline in the same breath. Rumor grows where rules are tight. Rumor says the visit is scheduled, not chosen, that brides are shaved, cloaked, left in shadow, that the man who arrives might not be the husband the paper lists, only the body the city prefers. Rumor says the door is locked from the outside. Rumor says the door is locked from the inside. Rumor says both can be true. You straighten the woven mat that did not ask to be straightened. You set the bronze cup upright, though it is already upright. You fold and refold a strip of linen until it becomes a quiet, useless rope in your hands. The owl beyond the porch takes a second mouse. Keys tick in the draft like rain behind a wall. Footsteps, not loud. A pause at the threshold the way a stylus pauses above a name. A key lifts, tests a tooth, finds its brother, turns. The door opens half a breath. The room shrinks to the size of the hinge. He stands in the doorway with the plain mantle and the face the city would call respectable, older, tireless, tired. He sets his sandals precisely, and the precision makes you colder than noise would have. He says your name, the new one, not the one that remembers your mother's hands. He does not step fully inside, as if the house were a tent the law pitched only for a moment. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You hear those letters in how he avoids certain words, in how he says duty like a prayer to a god neither of you chose. Then how his eyes move, not to you but to the ledger on the shelf, as if blessings can be written after they are committed. Somewhere in the night a boy runs past, laughing. Training requires breath, then silence again. A silence that behaves. He drinks a mouth of water the way soldiers drink before an order. He sets the cup down where it will not ring. He touches the mantle hung on its peg, the wool that keeps the door from biting. The city has taught him to make everything painless that can be made painless, and to accept the rest without language. You understand the lesson before he speaks it. Fact. Policy outlives pity. It eats pity and calls it fuel. Tonight there are no witnesses because witnesses become versions, and versions become crowds, and crowds become questions. The ephors do not have time to answer. You stare at the keys. You think wildly of taking them and running. To where? The city has no walls because it made the countryside a larger room. You imagine the officer's tablet, your name in the middle line, the red stroke waiting where a future should be. The moment turns like a lock. My ending was already signed. The lamp flickers once and steadies, obedient. Outside, the second mouse stops struggling. Inside, the shadow moves where the law has told it to stand. The door closes with that careful Spartan softness, the softness of a cut made with a sharp blade. Morning is not a rescue. Morning is a ledger. The house wakes the way Sparta wakes, without yawning. You light the brazier, sweep the threshold, pour water into a clay bowl that has never once asked your name. The keyring lies where it always lies, largest to smallest, the city's idea of beauty. Your hands learn the work before your mind agrees to it. Olives, linen, accounts, a life threaded through chores like string through a seam you did not choose. Fact, after the battle at Mantinea, alliances bent towards Sparta. The ephors tightened order, and households like this one absorbed the uncounted remains of victory. There is no decree nailed in the square to commemorate you. There is only a new entry in a private book, a new jar labeled in a careful hand, a cradle someone may someday carve from olive wood if the city is pleased. The erasure is practiced, not sudden. Neighbors greet you by the new name. The steward takes instruction from you because the law has placed you here. The market woman wraps figs in cloth and calls you mistress while her eyes measure compliance. Even pity is administrative. If you fall, someone will help you rise, and then remind you which street leads home, as if forgetting were a luxury the city cannot allow. Rumor travels on smaller feet than law. It says a bride shaved in the night found her hair again in the barracks, tied to a spear as a joke. It says another kept a lock in a locket and the steward reported it. It says the door that opens for visits closes more gently when a household produces infants, and slams a fraction harder when months pass in silence. Rumor understands the house the way wind understands a door, what it wants, what it fears, what it will forgive. You walk the grove and count trees with the older man. He speaks in numbers and weather, and you learn to answer in the same currency. Sometimes his voice softens on the syllables of your new name. Sometimes your own voice softens back, not from surrender, but from the exhaustion of striking flint against fate. Mercy here is a word for days without inspection. A messenger brings a tablet from town. Tax, not news. You run your thumb along the lip of the clay, a habit from another life. The thumb does not remember perfectly. The clay pretends not to mind. In the afternoon, you sew a rip in the mantle that keeps the door from biting. You do not cut your finger. You do not cry. You are becoming Spartan in the way a river becomes a bed, slowly, by insisting on forward. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You hear those letters again when, at dusk, the keys click like teeth, and he says there will be a brief absence. Drill, inspection, the mess. You nod because nodding is the grease that keeps the hinges kind. You think of the rumor that men visited by stealth, that women waited in darkness as if obedience were a candled vigil, that fathers were produced the way the city produced iron, hot, hammered, useful. You think of the great earthquake in 464 BC and how every policy since has been a brace against falling. You think of your husband who did not return from the wall, and of a bowl with a chip, and of a ribbon of silk you never retrieved from that nail. Small losses prove the larger ones are true. Erasure continues in lists. The steward updates yields. The neighbor's girl brings time and does not ask questions. The barracks song floats across rooftops like smoke that chooses its path. You are seen and not seen, named and renamed, held and never quite held. The house becomes a sentence you can recite without reading. The city stands behind it, breathing through you. At night, when the lamp is low, you hold the key ring and feel the cold bite straight through the skin into the part of you that still argues. It does not win, but it does not shut up. You hang the keys back where they live. You fold the mantle. You set the cup upright. Control is a ritual. Survival is too. Morning will come again with its ledger and its clean, obedient light. Your footsteps will find the same boards. Your hands will make the same knots. Somewhere an officer taps a tablet the way a judge taps a bench. Somewhere an old name dries under a red stroke and forgets the mouth that once said it. Even now there is a sealed letter they refuse to release. Breathe in slowly. Count the keys. 1, 2, 3. Breathe out. Let the wax cool. The house is quiet now. Not the Spartan quiet of orders, but the kind that belongs to rooms after work is done. A bowl rests where you left it. The mantle brushes the door with a hush like silk on stone. Somewhere beyond the grove, iron speaks to iron and fades. You are not there. You are here, at the small table, palms open, the lamp a low, patient star. History loves ledgers because ledgers don't cry. But you are allowed to. You are allowed to sit with the simple fact that you endured a city built to endure you. Names can be crossed, breath cannot. In-breath, hold, out-breath. Again. Let the ink in your memory dry without erasing you. Picture the night air moving through the olives. It carries a thin thread of incense from someone's hearth, a clean smoke that does not demand anything. Picture the ribbon that once snagged on a nail. Now imagine it freed. A line of cloth slipping into the dark like a small boat toward calmer water. What the city calls placement, you may call passage. What they call mercy, you may call mourning. You have learned the ritual of survival. Straighten the cup, fold the cloth, hang the keys where you can find them and where they cannot find you. Count what is yours to count. The steady heart, the steady hand, the door that opens for air. One more breath. In, out. The lamp lowers, gold to ember, ember to shadow. Silk settles, iron cools. The last candle leans, wavers, and goes to sleep.